I finally did it, and I thought they'd be proud. But they didn't even show up for as long as I can remember. I've loved the smell of freshly baked bread. It wasn't just the aroma, it was the magic of creating something out of nothing. The warmth that could comfort anyone, even on the hardest days. As a child, I would sneak into the kitchen before sunrise, watching my grandmother knead dough, her hands moving with a rhythm that seemed almost alive. That early fascination became an obsession, a dream that stayed with me through every challenge life threw my way. But chasing a dream isn't easy. I spent countless nights working second jobs just to pay for baking classes. I moved through life quietly, saving every dollar, cutting corners wherever I could, so that one day I could finally open a place of my own. Friends doubted me. Teachers gave polite smiles, but no real encouragement. And family. Well, family was another story. I remember my 10th birthday vividly. My sister got the biggest cake, complete with elaborate decorations, while I received a store-bought one barely big enough to feed my friends. It's the thought that counts, my mother said, brushing off my disappointment. I kept my mouth shut, but the sting of being overlooked planted a quiet determination in me. Every time they ignored a milestone, every time they favored my cousin or sibling, I tucked away the hurt, turning it into fuel for my future. High school was no different. While my peers were exploring hobbies and passions with parental support, my suggestions for joining baking competitions or volunteering at local cafes were met with indifference or worse, ridicule. Baking isn't a real career, my father sneered once, as if my dreams were a joke to be dismissed. That moment burned into me. It wasn't just about bread or pastries, it was about respect, acknowledgement, and finally being seen. Even college wasn't easy. I balanced classes, part-time jobs, and unpaid internships, constantly reminded of my family's lack of faith in me. I'd call home with excitement about a new recipe I perfected, only to be met with silence or a quick change of subject. But each setback strengthened my resolve. I promised myself that someday I would open a bakery so spectacular that no one could ignore it. A place that would represent everything I had worked for, my passion, my resilience, and my identity. And now, standing in front of the freshly painted sign with my name in elegant, swirling letters, I felt a rush of pride and disbelief. The smell of vanilla and caramel filled the air. Trays of golden croissants and glassy eclairs gleamed under the morning sun, and the cash register chimed as the first customers arrived. This was it. This was everything I had sacrificed for. But as I scanned the crowd, my excitement faltered. Not one familiar face from my family was among the guests. My heart sank. I had imagined hugs, proud smiles, maybe even tears of joy. Instead, there was nothing. Just empty chairs where my loved ones should have been. I had dreamed of this day for decades, worked tirelessly to make it a reality, and yet, they didn't even show. The invitations were simple, but elegant, each one printed on creamy cardstock with gold embossed lettering. I held the first envelope in my hands for a long time, staring at my own handwriting. You are cordially invited to the grand opening of bakery name. My heart raced as I imagined what it would feel like to hand these out, to see the pride or at least acknowledgement on my family's faces. I carefully sealed each envelope, picturing the reaction of every family member. My sister, always the favored one, would probably roll her eyes and dismiss it as another one of my hobbies. My mother might ignore it entirely, distracted by her own social circles. While my father, well, he would probably scoff at the idea that baking could ever be a serious achievement. Even my cousin, whose accomplishments were always the family headline, might glance at it and think, cute. But not my problem. I paused for a moment and felt a pang of vulnerability. Was I setting myself up for disappointment? What if they didn't come? What if all the years of sacrifice went unnoticed once again? But then I shook my head, reminding myself why I had worked so hard. This wasn't just about them. This was my dream, my labor, my chance to finally show that I could create something beautiful, something lasting, something that mattered. Still, I couldn't deny the tiny spark of hope that lingered in my chest. What if they were surprised? What if they finally recognized my efforts? I let myself imagine it. My father's eyebrows lifting in astonishment. My mother's hands clasped over her chest in pride. My sister whispering a grudging, "Wow, I didn't know she could do that." My heart swelled with the thought of proving them wrong, but also with the delicate wish that they might feel proud for even a fleeting moment. As I placed the invitations into envelopes, I thought about the emotional weight of this gesture. These little pieces of paper carried years of struggle, late nights, and silent sacrifices. Each one was a tiny beacon saying, "Look at what I've built. Look at what you almost missed out on." And that thought, that delicious anticipation, was enough to make me smile despite the nervous flutter in my stomach. I imagined the ripple effect if they chose to ignore it. Would they regret it later? Would they hear about the crowd, the pastries, the accolades, and feel a twinge of shame or curiosity? My mind drifted to scenarios of social media posts showcasing the bakery's success, friends praising the decor and flavors, local bloggers raving about the launch event. The idea that they might witness it all from the sidelines, powerless to claim the moment, sent a quiet thrill down my spine. By the time the last invitation was ready, my nerves were a mixture of excitement and apprehension. I had given each envelope a final inspection, as if ensuring that the golden letters themselves would communicate the magnitude of my achievement. These invitations weren't just announcements, they were statements. Statements that I had arrived, that I had endured, that I had created something extraordinary, and they couldn't ignore it. I carefully stacked the envelopes, ready to deliver them. My mind raced with images of the reactions I hoped for, the ones I feared, and the ones I secretly knew would never come. But deep down, I held onto that flicker of triumph, the feeling that, no matter what, this day was mine. And if they missed it, well, they'd only regret it later. The morning of the grand opening, sunlight streamed through the large glass windows, illuminating the freshly polished counters and trays of gold and croissants, macarons, and artisan breads. Balloons swayed gently in the breeze from the open doors, and the smell of vanilla and warm butter mingled with the subtle aroma of freshly ground coffee. Soft instrumental music played in the background, and every corner of the bakery gleamed, meticulously prepared to showcase years of dedication and sacrifice. Guests began to arrive in a steady stream. Neighbors I had known for years, friends who had supported me through late-night baking experiments, and a few curious strangers drawn in by social media posts. Their smiles were genuine, their compliments warm. "This is incredible. I've never tasted a croissant this perfect." I felt a flicker of pride watching people admire my creation. Finally, the dream I had poured every ounce of energy into was alive, tangible, and thriving. And then I scanned the room, heart beating faster with anticipation, waiting for the familiar faces of my family. My sister with her dramatic entrance, my father with that critical squint I knew too well, my mother pretending to be busy yet proud in her subtle way. But none of them appeared. Not a single chair held the people I had imagined celebrating alongside me. A sharp, hollow pang struck my chest. How could they not come? I had worked tirelessly for this moment, sacrificing sleep, social life, and countless weekends. I had envisioned them sharing this pride, laughing, complimenting, maybe even asking if I needed help behind the counter. And now, all those dreams collided with a cruel, empty reality. I moved through the crowd, forcing a smile as guests congratulated me. But inside, disbelief twisted into a bitter knot. Did they even care? I asked myself repeatedly. Flashbacks began to crowd my mind. Birthdays where my sister received the grand cake while I got the store-bought one. Family dinners where my achievements were barely acknowledged, swallowed in stories about my cousins. The time my father scoffed when I suggested a baking competition. Each memory pressed against the raw wound of today, amplifying the sting of their absence. Of course, they wouldn't come, I thought bitterly. They never believed I could do it. They didn't think I was worthy of their attention. But even knowing that didn't soften the blow. Pride wrestled with hurt, and my chest felt tight with betrayal. I forced myself to step back behind the counter, serving pastries and coffee to guests, each compliment a tiny bomb, but not enough to erase the emptiness. I tried to imagine excuses. Maybe they were stuck in traffic, caught in emergencies, but even as I clung to that hope, a creeping realization settled in. They had chosen not to witness this. They had deliberately missed the moment I had worked a lifetime to reach. My mind raced. Did they think I would fail? Did they think I wouldn't survive the struggle to make this bakery real? As the day went on, the bakery buzzed with energy, but each cheer from a guest reminded me of the silence from my family. The emptiness of the chairs was deafening. I glanced at the corner where my mother usually sat, imagining her pretending to be busy, my sister whispering about my efforts behind my back, my father dismissing the entire event as trivial. Every imagined scenario was a dagger, each one sharper than the last. Yet, amid the ache of rejection, a subtle fire ignited within me. This wasn't just a moment of loss, it was a moment of clarity. Their absence spoke volumes about who they were and what they thought of me. And if they didn't show now, then they would have no choice but to witness my triumph later, whether they wanted to or not. I straightened my apron, forced a smile, and greeted another guest. The pastries were perfect. The bakery was perfect. And as I poured coffee for a delighted customer, I whispered to myself, let them miss it now. The moment they regret it is coming. After the initial shock of seeing empty chairs where my family should have been, a quiet heaviness settled over me. As I wiped down the counters and arranged the last tray of pastries, a part of me questioned everything. Am I really enough? The familiar pang of shame returned, whispering that all my sacrifices might have been for nothing. If the people I loved or thought loved me couldn't bother to show up, what did that say about my worth? Memories flooded and unbidden, my achievements dismissed, my passions ridiculed, the countless times I had been overlooked while others were praised for far less. I felt small again, like the same neglected child from years ago, standing in a shadow of their favoritism. The bakery, my dream come true, felt momentarily hollow. Was it possible to feel proud of something when those closest to you seemed to think it didn't matter? I paused behind the counter, letting the morning sunlight fall on the freshly polished floors. Guests laughed, took photos, and sampled pastries with delight, their joy spilling over in compliments that warmed my chest. For a moment, I let myself feel that pride, the recognition, even from strangers, that I had created something remarkable. The contradiction was dizzying. Disappointment weighed heavily, yet achievement shone brilliantly beside it. I realized that my power didn't come from their approval, it had always been inside me, quietly building as I worked in secret, night after night, against odds no one else cared to notice. I thought of my childhood self, standing in the kitchen with flour on my hands, dreaming of this exact moment. Back then, I had no one cheering me on, no family to validate my love for baking. Yet here I was, in a bakery that smelled like success and ambition, with every detail meticulously crafted, every pastry a testament to years of persistence. That child would have been proud, and that pride was enough for me. Still, the ache of rejection lingered. I imagined my family's indifference, their silent dismissal echoing in my mind. They should be here. They should see this. They should know what they missed. The thought stung, but instead of shrinking, I felt a subtle shift. The emptiness of their absence became fuel. If they wanted to underestimate me, if they wanted to ignore my success, that was their choice. I didn't need their validation to know my worth. I straightened my shoulders, adjusted my apron, and took a deep breath. The bakery was alive with energy, with people celebrating something I had poured my soul into. I allowed myself to enjoy it fully, savoring the laughter, the compliments, the smell of fresh bread rising perfectly in the ovens. I was no longer just the ignored child or the overlooked daughter. I was the creator of something magnificent. For the first time that day, I felt untouchable. The disappointment remained, a bitter seasoning to the sweetness of triumph, but it no longer controlled me. In that moment, I realized the truth. Power didn't come from who showed up. Power came from perseverance, skill, and belief in oneself. And if my family failed to recognize that, It only made my victory sweeter. With a final glance around the bakery, I whispered to myself, I may have been ignored, but I am unstoppable. This day is mine, no matter who is here or not. By mid-morning, the bakery was buzzing with life. Neighbors I had known for years drifted in, drawn by the tantalizing smell of freshly baked bread and pastries. Loyal friends, those who had supported me during late-night baking experiments and tasted countless imperfect batches, were already seated, sipping coffee and marveling at the display. Their smiles were genuine, their excitement infectious. I felt a small surge of warmth, knowing that these were people who truly celebrated me, even when my family never had. Then came the unexpected guests, a local blogger I had invited months ago, curious influencers, and even a reporter from the neighborhood magazine. Cameras clicked, smartphones filmed, and within minutes, my bakery's opening was being documented with the kind of enthusiasm I had only dreamed of. The bakery that had been a quiet fantasy in my mind was now the center of attention. Wow, these eclairs are divine, said Mrs. Thompson, my next-door neighbor, her eyes wide as she took a delicate bite. You've outdone yourself. I've never tasted anything like this. I smiled, feeling the weight of the past months lift just slightly. Thank you, Mrs. Thompson. That means so much. It's been a long journey. This croissant is perfect, a young woman commented, snapping a photo for her Instagram story. Seriously, where have you been hiding this place? As compliments flowed, I glanced at the entrance, half expecting, half hoping to see the familiar faces I had longed for all morning. But the chairs remained empty, and yet, the absence of my family only made the attention I was receiving now feel sharper, more satisfying. Every smile, every bite of pastry, every comment praising my work was a quiet reminder of what they were missing. They don't even realize what they're missing out on, I thought, a flicker of satisfaction sparking in my chest. One day, they'll see. They'll hear about this crowd, this success, and it will hit them that they were nowhere to be found. A customer approached the counter, handing me a small card. I just wanted to let you know, I'll definitely be back. This is the best bakery in town, she said, beaming. I tucked the cart into the tip jar, a subtle symbol that my effort was paying off. Everything looks amazing, said Mr. Patel, a regular who had sampled every pastry during my test batches. I can see why people are talking about this place. You've got talent, real talent. I nodded, a quiet smile forming. I appreciate that. It's taken years to get here, but I finally made it. Each interaction, each compliment was a small victory. The bakery was more than just a business. It was validation, recognition, proof that my work mattered. And while the praise came from strangers and friends rather than family, it carried weight. It carried power. Even as the morning wore on and the crowd grew, I felt a subtle thrill knowing that word of my success would inevitably reach my family. Their absence in the bakery now contrasted starkly with the life, laughter, and admiration filling every corner. They'll hear about this, I thought, and they'll know what they missed. For the first time that day, I didn't feel like the overlooked child or the dismissed dreamer. I was the baker, the creator, the one who had turned years of effort into something tangible and celebrated. And the world, well, a part of it was finally seeing me for who I truly was. Just as I was taking a deep breath behind the counter, a familiar voice called out, one I hadn't expected to hear today. Did you see how busy it's getting? A neighbor whispered, nudging toward the street outside. My curiosity piqued. I stepped closer to the window, scanning the crowd, when a shocking realization hit me. My family was nearby. They weren't walking through the doors. Not yet, but I could see them just outside, lingering awkwardly on the sidewalk, peeking in as if they weren't sure whether to enter. My heart skipped a beat, a cocktail of emotions swirling inside me: anger, disbelief, and a small, thrilling spark of vindication. So they saw it. They saw the crowd, the excitement, the proof of what I had built, and they still chose not to come inside. A memory flashed across my mind. My father dismissing my first attempts at selling pastries at a school fundraiser, scoffing at the idea that I could ever run a business. My sister, laughing when I mentioned a small victory in a baking competition, saying, "You'll never be as good as anyone else in this family." My mother, always polite but detached, never lifting a finger to support me when it mattered most. They had underestimated me for years, and now the universe had orchestrated a moment where they could witness my triumph yet remain powerless to participate. I felt a surge of power that I hadn't expected. The very people who had ignored my efforts were now watching my success, forced to recognize it from a distance. FOMO tightened its grip. Every cheer, every satisfied bite from the guests inside, every compliment to my staff was a small dagger reminding them of what they had missed. And the best part, they didn't even know the full story. "Maybe we should go in." I imagined my mother muttering hesitantly, her pride battling with the fear of being seen too late. My sister would probably fidget, pretending she wasn't jealous, while my father might scowl, too stubborn to admit curiosity. But it was exactly the uncertainty that made the moment so satisfying. I didn't need to confront them just yet. I could let them stew in it, letting the tension build until it reached its perfect pitch. Instead, I smiled quietly behind the counter, keeping busy with customers while stealing glances at the glass doors. My heart raced not with disappointment, but with anticipation. Let them watch. Let them think about what they're missing. Let them feel it without having the power to change it. I had spent years waiting for this day, and now the tables had turned. They weren't invited into my world yet. They had to earn their place or at least acknowledge that I had already succeeded without them. I poured a latte for a guest, carefully frothing the milk, and heard another compliment. "Everything here is incredible. You must be so proud." Pride bubbled up inside me. I nodded, forcing myself to look calm, composed. When inside, I was thrilled that the universe had handed me this quiet victory. My family's absence had shifted from pain to power. For the first time that day, I felt truly untouchable. They could see all the excitement, the praise, the bakery alive with energy, and yet they had no way to participate. They had underestimated me for decades, and now their jealousy, pride, and misjudgments only amplified the sweetness of my success. I leaned back for a moment, letting the moment sink in. They're out there watching. They're feeling every bit of what they refused to experience. And I'm just getting started. I made a silent vow this day would not end quietly. Every overlooked comment, every ignored milestone, every subtle humiliation they had inflicted would be balanced, carefully, deliberately. In the days to come, I glanced around the bakery once more. My customers were laughing, taking photos, tasting everything I had poured my heart into. And just beyond the glass, my family lingered, powerless, observing their own failure to be part of something extraordinary. The realization hit me fully. The first shock of victory was mine, and it was delicious. As I watched my family linger outside, unable or unwilling to step through the doors, my mind drifted back to the countless moments they had let me down. These weren't grand gestures of cruelty, but small, insidious slights that had accumulated over the years, shaping a quiet resentment that I had carried into adulthood. Each memory was a sting, a reminder of the neglect and favoritism that had fueled my drive to succeed. I remembered high school awards night, standing on stage for my baking competition trophy, the applause small and polite. My sister had rolled her eyes from the audience, whispering to friends, "Why bother? She'll never make it big." My father had nodded perfunctorily, barely acknowledging my achievement before shifting attention to my cousin, who had done something impressive in sports. The humiliation stung, but the lesson was clear. Nothing I did was ever enough. Birthdays were never better. Every year, it seemed my efforts were measured against someone else's accomplishments. On my 18th birthday, I had baked a homemade cake filled with layers of flavors I had perfected after weeks of experimentation. I had proudly presented it to the family, only for my mother to sigh and say, "It's sweet, but why not just buy one from the store like normal people?" My father smirked, and my sister made a face that said everything I needed to know. Even my cousins were polite but distant. My creation, my labor of love, was dismissed. Financial dismissals cut even deeper. When I saved up for my first professional baking course, I had asked my parents for advice about loans and budgeting. Instead of guidance, I received sarcasm and doubt. "You really think pastries can pay your bills?" My father had asked, as if my ambitions were laughable. My mother shook her head with quiet disappointment, not because I had failed, but because I dared to pursue something she didn't understand. The message was consistent. My dreams were never valuable in their eyes. Even small public events carried the sting of favoritism. At family gatherings, my contributions meals, baked goods, thoughtful gestures were ignored, while my sister's casual, effortless achievements were praised. I had learned to smile, to laugh along, to hide the hurt, but inside, the resentment simmered, and the determination to one day prove them wrong took root. These memories resurface now, like a gallery of quiet betrayals, each one more vivid than the last. I realized that the feelings of rejection I was experiencing today weren't new, they were echoes of a lifetime. And yet, this time was different. This time, the power was mine. Each slight, each dismissive comment, each instance of favoritism had pushed me to build something tangible, something undeniable. My bakery wasn't just a business. It was proof that I had endured, grown, and succeeded despite them. I could almost hear their voices from the past blending with the present. My father's dismissive tone, my mother's subtle eye rolls, my sister's snide remarks, and now, outside the bakery, I saw them in miniature versions of those old patterns, hesitant, jealous, and powerless to intervene. It was the first time I felt the balance of the scales tipping in my favor. A quiet thrill ran through me. All the moments of embarrassment, of being overlooked, of watching others take credit for what I had done alone, they had led me here. And as my eyes returned to the lively bakery full of smiling customers, I realized that their absence, combined with these memories, wasn't just pain. It was context. It was fuel. It was the foundation of the revenge I had only just begun to taste up. As the day continued and the bakery pulsed with energy, I felt a new kind of confidence rising in me, a quiet, calculated certainty that today wasn't just a grand opening. It was the beginning of something bigger. While the crowd mingled and customers snapped photos of every corner of the shop, I slipped into the back room for a moment of quiet. That was when I checked my phone and smiled. My secret plan was already in motion. Months earlier, while my family was busy dismissing my dreams, I had been planting seeds, reaching out to local influencers, submitting my story to community newsletters, and inviting a handful of food critics and VIPs to a private tasting event scheduled for later the afternoon. It wasn't just a celebration, it was a statement. And the best part, my family had no idea. A notification popped up. "We're on our way. Can't wait to feature you." My chest tightened, not with anxiety, but with satisfaction. The kind that comes when years of being underestimated start to flip into undeniable public success. I imagined my parents standing outside, watching strangers stream in, noticing the flashes of cameras, the growing buzz on social media. The FOMO was hitting them in real time. And I hadn't even deployed the heaviest part of my plan yet. I stepped back onto the shop floor, trying to contain my excitement as a reporter waved me over. "We'd love a quote for our weekend feature," she said. "Your story is inspiring our small business built from passion and resilience. People need to hear this." I almost laughed. People need to hear this. Oh, my family was definitely going to hear it. Of course, I replied with a calm smile. I'd be honored. As the interview began, cameras clicking and customers watching, I caught a glimpse of my sister through the window. Her jaw tightened, her eyes narrowed at the reporter's microphone. My mother tugged at her sleeve, whispering something that made her shoulders stiffen. My father stood with his arms crossed, his expression darkening as he saw the crowd around me widen. People shaking my hand, praising my work, celebrating the very dream he had once mocked. And I hadn't even pulled the final trigger. The VIP tasting event was set to start in 2 hours. The guest list included the mayor's assistant to major local food bloggers and the owner of a nearby successful restaurant who had taken an interest in mentoring me. The moment those people walked in, any hint of doubt about my legitimacy would disappear. My bakery wouldn't just be good, it would be validated, recognized, and celebrated. In public, I pictured my family's faces when the influencers posted stories tagged with my bakery's name, when articles calling my journey inspiring appeared online, when people they respected shared photos of my pastries, praising the craftsmanship they had spent a lifetime dismissing. They wouldn't just feel left out, they would feel irrelevant, invisible. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel guilty about that. I looked around the bustling room, the warm lighting bouncing off polished countertops, the smell of cinnamon and fresh bread filling every corner, and I realized something. This moment was mine, not theirs. And if they were hurt or embarrassed by their absence, then maybe, just maybe, that was exactly what they needed. A taste of what it felt like to be on the outside looking in. I adjusted my apron, straightened my posture, and stepped back into the crowd with renewed purpose. Let them watch. Let them stew. This was only the beginning. By mid-afternoon, the energy inside the bakery had shifted. The private tasting event was about to begin, and I could feel the hum of excitement buzzing through the air like electricity. Cameras flashed, influencers snapped photos, and guests whispered animatedly about the pastries and decor. I moved behind the counter with practiced grace, pouring coffee and offering samples. When a familiar shadow caught my eye near the entrance, my heart skipped a beat. My family, they were here, but not in the confident, casual way I had imagined all morning. They lingered near the doorway, whispering to each other, faces tight with a mixture of embarrassment, jealousy, and hesitation. My sister fidgeted with her purse, glancing nervously at the crowd. My mother cleared her throat and tugged at her scarf, as if to make herself invisible. My father stood stoically, arms crossed, though his eyes betrayed curiosity mixed with the faintest hint of regret. It was clear they had heard about my bakery's success, likely from neighbors, social media posts, and the growing buzz outside. They were trying to make amends, but cautiously, hesitantly, like timid animals stepping towards something that had long since outgrown their reach. I froze for a moment, assessing the scene. My mind replayed decades of small betrayals, dismissals, and favoritism. I remembered the childhood birthdays that had been overshadowed by my sister's achievements, the sarcastic comments on my first business ideas, the countless times they ignored my progress while proudly praising someone else. And now, here they were, attempting to enter a world I had built entirely on my own. My chest tightened as a swirl of emotions washed over me. Anger, disbelief, satisfaction, and a flicker of curiosity. I wanted to confront them, to make them feel the sting of absence. But a tiny part of me, the part that had always longed for their approval, wondered if maybe, just maybe, I should let them in. We didn't realize. My mother began, voice soft and hesitant. We didn't know it would be like this. We're sorry we missed it. My sister jumped in, nervously twisting a strand of hair around her finger. Yeah, we heard from some people. This place is amazing. I mean, wow, you really did it. I felt a tight knot in my stomach, a mixture of old hurt and present pride. Every word was a reminder of what they had missed, but also a test of my own strength. Did I let them back in after years of neglect and dismissal? Or did I let this moment remain theirs only in absence, a lesson they would never forget? My father stepped closer, attempting to assert calm authority, though I could see the curiosity in his eyes. We should have been here. You've done well, better than we imagined. I smiled, but it wasn't the warm, welcoming smile of before. It was careful, measured, almost teasing. I let a bee pass, letting their words hang in the air like a challenge. They didn't know what to expect. Do I let them in? Do I acknowledge them after all this? The question twisted inside me, a cliffhanger that held them at the edge of my world. My heart wanted to rage, to lecture, to demand recognition, but a part of me also wanted to savor the moment. letting them feel the full weight of their absence before deciding whether to grant them entry. They lingered, waiting for a reaction, and the tension was almost tangible. The bustling bakery seemed to fade for a moment, replaced by the silent standoff between past neglect and present triumph. The power had shifted, and for once, it was mine to wield. I adjusted my apron, took a deep breath, and let a small, deliberate pause stretch between us. Their eyes widened slightly, realizing that I wasn't about to respond immediately, that the control was no longer theirs. And in that pause, I knew the next move would define everything. Would I forgive, accept, or leave them outside, tasting only the bitterness of what they had missed? The answer hung in the air, unanswered. By late afternoon, the bakery had transformed from a charming local shop into a hub of excitement and acclaim. The private tasting event was in full swing. Cameras clicked incessantly, flashes capturing every delicate pastry and every smile of delighted guests. Social media posts began appearing in real time. Food bloggers tagging the bakery, influencers sharing stories about the perfect croissants, and neighborhood reporters live streaming snippets of the celebration. The accolades didn't stop there. A local food magazine editor approached me, holding a camera and a notepad. "We'd like to feature your bakery in our next issue," she said, enthusiasm radiating from her every word. "Your story, your skill, it's inspirational. People will want to see this. Everyone will know your name by the end of the week." I nodded politely, a quiet smile playing on my lips. "Thank you. I'd be honored." Outside, my family remained in a tight cluster, watching through the glass doors. Their expressions were a mix of awe, disbelief, and unease. The crowd inside, buzzing with excitement and admiration, made the gulf between them and me even more tangible. Every flash of a camera, every recorded video, every online mention was a public testament to what they had missed. She's done it," my mother whispered to no one in particular, her voice tight with a mixture of pride and discomfort. "I can't believe it," my sister muttered, arms folded as she watched me move gracefully from table to table, smiling, taking photos, and engaging with guests. All this, and we weren't even invited. My father's jaw tightened, eyes narrowing as he followed my every movement. He looked almost small, like a man realizing too late that the child he had underestimated had surpassed him in a world he never valued. The irony was almost delicious. The audience inside and outside the bakery knew the truth. I had built this entirely on my own. Every compliment, every camera shot, every social media post was a testament to years of hard work that my family had dismissed, ignored, or belittled, and they were powerless to take part, forced to witness their own absence reflected back in public admiration. A food blogger approached me with her camera ready. "This setup, the pastries, the story, it's all so impressive. Mind if I get a quick interview?" I smiled, letting the camera capture my calm confidence. "Of course, I'm happy to share what inspired me to open this bakery." As I spoke, I could see my family's reactions more clearly. My sister's lips pressed into a thin line, her cheeks flushing with a mixture of embarrassment and envy. My mother's eyes flickered with restrained emotion, and my father's posture stiffened, as if the pride he refused to voice might escape despite him. The more I engaged with the crowd, the more vivid their silent frustration became. Every compliment, every photo, every post shared online amplified the dramatic irony. The audience could see the family's growing regret, but they themselves had no control over the narrative. They had missed the opening, and now the world was celebrating something they had refused to witness firsthand. I allowed myself a private smile. Years of neglect, dismissive comments, and favoritism had fueled my ambition, and now the universe was giving me the stage. And though my family remained on the outside, watching, the story of my success was being told exactly as it should be: public, undeniable, and unforgettable. I moved to greet another guest, offering them a slice of a freshly baked tart. The flash of cameras and the buzz of admiration surrounded me, yet my thoughts drifted briefly to the family outside. The emotional tension, the power reversal, the sweet taste of vindication, it all came together in one exhilarating, satisfying moment. Yes, they could see it all. And yes, they could feel the sting of missing it. And I was untouchable. The bakery buzzed with energy. Cameras flashing, glasses clinking, and guests praising every delicate pastry I had worked so hard to perfect. Outside, my family lingered, uncertain, hesitant, and clearly feeling the weight of their absence. Their attempts to step back into the story were timid, subtle apologies, awkward smiles, and whispered comments meant to suggest recognition without fully committing. I felt a swell of emotions, anger, vindication, and most importantly, control. This was my moment. Years of neglect, sarcasm, and favoritism had led to this precise point. And now, unlike all the other times, I could decide whether to let them in or leave them outside, forced to watch their own mistakes unfold. As they peered through the glass, my mind drifted to a small, sleek box tucked under the counter. Earlier, I had treated myself to a luxury token, a personalized gold-plated pastry knife engraved with my initials, a symbol of every sacrifice, every late night. Every moment of doubt turned into achievement. With deliberate calm, I lifted the knife and ran my fingers along its polished edge. It gleamed in the sunlight, an elegant reminder that this victory was mine. Complete and untouchable, I posted a quick social media story. A sweeping shot of the bakery filled with laughter and energy, the golden knife prominently displayed in the foreground. Captioned, "Dreams realized. Every sacrifice worth it." Hashtag grand opening, hashtag dream achieved, hashtag independent success. No mention of family, no invitation, just the story of triumph. The unmistakable signal that my world had grown beyond those who had doubted me. Inside, guests cheered, sampling pastries and marveling at the decor. The private tasting event was in full swing, influencers snapping pictures, reporters recording interviews. I moved with grace, laughing, conversing, and accepting compliments that would once have felt hollow, but now resonated deeply. Every glance I stole at the glass doors reminded me of the power shift. They could see it, feel it, but could not claim it. My sister's expression tightened, lips pressed into a thin line as she watched the social media post go live. My mother's cheeks flushed with embarrassment, her eyes flicking from the crowd to the camera to the pastry knife glinting in my hands. My father's arms remained crossed, jaw clenched, and yet his eyes betrayed a grudging acknowledgement of what he had missed. I allowed a subtle smile, not of malice, but of quiet triumph. Years of being underestimated, ignored, and dismissed had brought me here. I didn't need their validation to feel accomplished, but seeing their reactions, witnessing the sharp sting of missed opportunity, added a delicious layer to the satisfaction. I held the gold knife for a moment longer, rotating it in my hands like a trophy. It wasn't about revenge in a cruel sense, it was about assertion, about owning the narrative that had long been denied to me. I had created something extraordinary, and this day, this success, was fully mine. I turned back to my guests, laughing at a joke a blogger made about the flaky texture of my croissants, pouring coffee with a steady hand, and greeting another visitor. The bakery hummed with life, a living testament to my perseverance. Outside, my family remained where they belonged for now, observers of a triumph they had not earned. And as the sun began to set, casting golden light across the polished countertops and the happy faces within, I whispered to myself, "This is for me." Every sacrifice, every tear, every ignored word, it all led here. And I'm finally untouchable. As the evening sun cast warm, golden light across the bakery, a quiet calm settled over the room. Guests lingered, savoring the last bites of pastries and sharing their praise for the event. Cameras had stopped clicking for the moment, and the hum of excitement gave way to a soft, contented energy. I paused behind the counter, letting the moment sink in, and allowed myself to reflect on everything that had brought me here. Across the glass doors, my family still lingered, some who were reluctant, hesitant, and undeniably humbled. I could see the subtle shifts in their expressions. My sister's lips pressed tightly, eyes wide with realization. My mother's posture stiffened, a flicker of shame crossing her face. My father's jaw loosened as he let the truth settle in. They were experiencing their first taste of the consequences of their long-standing underestimation, the quiet reckoning of someone they had overlooked, dismissed, or believed incapable. The contrast was stark. I remembered the countless times my achievements had been ignored, birthdays overshadowed, accomplishments belittled, dreams ridiculed, and sarcasm thinly veiling their lack of faith in me. I had been the child standing in the shadows of favoritism, the ignored sibling at every family gathering, the one whose successes were never celebrated. Now, they were outsiders looking in at a world I had built entirely for myself, a life shaped by dedication, skill, and perseverance. A small smile tugged at my lips as I watched them. I didn't feel the need for confrontation or verbal vindication. The proof was undeniable. The laughter, the admiration, the media attention, the social media posts highlighting my journey all spoke louder than any words could. I had gone from invisible to celebrated, from underestimated to untouchable, and every person inside the bakery bore witness. I recalled my childhood self, timidly presenting baked goods for school events or trying to share small successes, only to be met with indifference or criticism. Each memory, once a source of pain, now served as a benchmark against which to measure my triumph. Every slight, every sarcastic comment, every act of favoritism had fueled a fire that led to this very moment. The bakery wasn't just a dream fulfilled, it was a living monument to my resilience. I took a deep breath, letting the warm aroma of fresh pastries and coffee fill my senses. My eyes drifted to the gold-plated pastry knife I had gifted myself earlier, its gleaming surface a reflection of not only my skill, but my self-worth. And like the past, I was now in complete control of my narrative. I had created a world where my achievements could no longer be ignored. The subtle reckoning unfolding outside was the natural result of that reality. Inside, guests continued to celebrate, unaware of the silent drama at the doors. Yet I could feel the weight of the moment. My family confronted, for perhaps the first time, with the tangible evidence of my dedication and ability. They had underestimated me for years, and now their admiration or perhaps their jealousy was unavoidable. The balance had shifted, and the contrast between before and after could not have been clearer. Once dismissed, now respected. Once overlooked, now publicly lauded. Once ignored, now undeniably powerful. A soft chuckle escaped me as I served a customer, my heart swelling with a quiet satisfaction. This wasn't about revenge in the traditional sense. It wasn't about humiliation or malice. It was about acknowledgement, self-earned, undeniable acknowledgement. I had turned every past wound into motivation, every slight into opportunity, every doubt into proof of my resilience. And now my family was left to witness it all. As the final guests departed, the bakery quieted, the last beams of sunlight reflecting off the polished counters and trays of pastries. I leaned against the counter, savoring the sweet taste of achievement. The journey had been long, painful at times, and often lonely, but it had been worth every moment. I glanced one last time toward the glass doors, where my family still lingered, eyes wide, silent, and humbled. I didn't need to say anything. The transformation was complete. The child who had been rejected, overlooked, and underestimated had grown into a confident, capable, celebrated adult. The difference between then and now was crystal clear. From rejection to respect, from invisibility to admiration, from dismissed to unstoppable. And in that quiet moment of reflection, I allowed myself to feel it fully, the culmination of dreams, the validation of effort, and the deep, enduring satisfaction of finally being seen by the world. And perhaps most painfully for them, by the very people who had once ignored me. The bakery was quiet now, the last guests having drifted away, leaving behind the faint aroma of fresh bread and sugar, mingling with the soft hum of the city outside. I stood behind the counter, hands resting lightly on the polished surface, and let myself breathe. For the first time in a long while, I felt completely at peace. The day had been a whirlwind of emotions, victories, and subtle lessons delivered without a single word of confrontation. My mind wandered back to the earliest memories of my childhood, the small, uncelebrated victories that went unnoticed or were brushed aside. I remembered standing at the school bake sale, offering cookies I had stayed up all night perfecting, while my sister's store-bought cupcakes drew all the praise. I recalled birthdays where my efforts went unseen, accomplishments belittled, and words of encouragement replaced with sarcasm or indifference. Each memory had once stung like salt in a wound, reinforcing a sense of invisibility. A quiet voice telling me I wasn't enough. And yet, here I was, the child who had been overlooked, dismissed, and underestimated, had grown into someone capable of creating a world of recognition, respect, and admiration. The bakery wasn't just a business, it was proof that dedication, passion, and belief in oneself could overcome years of neglect. Proof that I could transform rejection into power, invisibility into visibility, and doubt into undeniable achievement. I ran my fingers over the gold-plated pastry knife I had gifted myself earlier, symbol not just of craftsmanship, but of triumph over the limitations imposed by others. The shine caught the fading sunlight streaming through the windows, reflecting a quiet brilliance that felt like my own reflection back at me. I smiled softly. This was mine. Every ounce of effort, every sacrifice, every sleepless night had led here. Flashbacks continued to surface, now filtered through the lens of accomplishment. I remembered their faces, the dismissive glances, the snide remarks, but instead of pain, I felt satisfaction. Those memories were no longer wounds. They were milestones, markers of the distance I had traveled. The bakery, the applause, the social media attention, the VIP guests, they all represented the tangible manifestation of a life no longer dictated by others' indifference. I thought of my family outside, witnessing my success, but unable to participate. A pang of compassion flickered briefly, but it was tempered by the knowledge that their absence had made my triumph sweeter. Every slight, every overlooked effort, every moment of dismissal had fueled the resolve that carried me here. And in a quiet, karmic justice, they now watched the proof of their misjudgment unfold. Powerless to change it, I took a slow, deliberate walk through the empty bakery, touching counters, trays, and display cases as if to absorb the reality of it. The space smelled of ambition realized, of love poured into flour, sugar, and butter. I realized that this journey had never been about proving anyone else wrong. It had been about proving to myself that I was worthy, capable, and unstoppable. Sitting by the window, I looked outside at the city, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows, and felt a serene sense of closure. The contrasts of past and present were sharp and undeniable. From invisible to celebrated, from dismissed to respected, from rejected to independent and triumphant, I had achieved not only a dream, but also a profound understanding of my own worth. And in that moment, I allowed myself a final, contented sigh. The bakery was no longer just a business. It was a monument to resilience, a testament to patience and perseverance, and a declaration that I was the author of my own destiny. The audience of the world, the customers, the influencers, the media, none of it mattered as much as the realization that I no longer needed anyone else's approval. I smiled, imagining my younger self, standing in the shadows of neglect, silently longing to be seen. "You made it," I whispered, "and you did it on your own." The sun dipped lower, golden light bathing the bakery in warmth. I was untouchable, I was whole, and, finally, I was free. The bakery hummed with life as evening settled in, golden lights reflecting off the polished counters and trays of freshly baked treats. Loyal friends laughed round small tables, sharing stories and savoring pastries they had come to love. Customers lingered, chatting animatedly, complimenting the intricate flavors and the cozy, vibrant atmosphere. The joy was tangible, a living celebration of everything I had worked for. Built entirely through my own dedication and vision, I moved among the crowd, pouring coffee, offering samples, and soaking in the energy of genuine appreciation. Each smile, each compliment, each moment of delight reinforced the knowledge that this day, this bakery, and this success were fully mine. I had created something extraordinary, not for recognition from my family, but for myself and the community that had supported me along the way. Outside, through the glass doors, I caught sight of my family once more. They lingered at the edge of the sidewalk, quiet and hesitant, faces betraying curiosity or, and the faintest sting of regret. They could see the laughter, the camaraderie, and the celebration they had chosen to miss. The subtle FOMO was unmistakable. They had the vantage point, but they were powerless to participate, forced to witness the culmination of years of effort without sharing in it. A friend raised a glass to me, laughing warmly. "You've done it," she said. "Look at this place, it's incredible." I smiled, clinking my cup gently against hers. "We did it," I corrected, nodding toward the team of loyal staff and supportive friends who had helped bring the vision to life. Every layer of this success, from the flaky croissants to the gleaming counters, was built with love, skill, and dedication. I allowed myself a moment to step back and observe the scene. The joy, the chatter, the cameras flashing, the subtle glow of admiration. I could feel the contrast of the past, the childhood birthdays ignored, the dismissive words, the years of feeling invisible against this moment of undeniable triumph. And for the first time, all those years of neglect felt like fuel that had propelled me towards something greater. The family outside shifted uneasily, glancing at one another as if realizing what they had forfeited. The audience could see it, the missed opportunity, the distance between rejection and success, and the quiet power of someone finally standing in their own light. Yet I didn't gloat. I didn't call attention to their absence. The message was simple, subtle, and infinitely more satisfying. This moment was mine, fully lived, and they had missed it. I returned to my friends and customers, laughter spilling round me, offering another slice of cake to a delighted guest. The warmth, the support, the sense of accomplishment wrapped around me like a soft, comforting blanket. Everything I had dreamed of, every sacrifice and every struggle, was reflected in the smiles and the shared joy of the people who had believed in me. Outside, the sun dipped low, casting long shadows over the sidewalk where my family lingered. And inside, I felt a sense of completeness, a peaceful triumph that no absence or past slight could diminish. They could watch, they could feel regret, they could wonder, but they could not take away what I had created. I poured myself a cup of tea and stepped to the window, watching the last guests leave, laughter and conversation fading into the evening air. The bakery glowed warmly behind me, a beacon of achievement, resilience, and independence. I whispered quietly to myself, smiling, "This is what it feels like to be truly seen." And they missed it. And with that, I returned to my friends, my customers, my life untouched by their doubt, fully alive in my triumph, and free to savor every single moment of it.